Hello, everybody! If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer, and that must mean it's time for another episode of Warhammer Weekly. Joining me, as always, is my co-host Tom. What's up, buddy? How you doing? Mute that.
Hello.
Mute it, Tom.
I'm on it. I'm on it. We're good. Hello, friends.
Pro as always, Tom.
I mean, I've only been doing this, 6 years?
Yeah, it's gonna be 7 soon. Yeah. One of my dreams, Tom. This has nothing to do with anything or with the show. I just want to say this real fast. One of my dreams is to do a supercut. Like, I want to go watch every episode and pull clips and do an entire episode that's just supercuts. Okay. And of course,
that sounds like a lot of editing.
It's a lot of editing. That's what stopped me. Tom, why don't you have your headphones? Because I can hear myself echoing.
Yeah, but you're really loud. Because my headphones died today at work.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
I mean, I could go get headphones if we need.
We might need to. Yes, I'd rather that than not echo. But today we're going to be talking about meta, the meta of AoS as it rests right now. It's a fairly stable meta, so we're going to break into it, talk about it, see what it's like, and but first, of course, the news. And while I do the news, Tom is going to go get his headphones so he doesn't echo.
No, this is my only job. Don't take this from me.
Okay, well then go and I won't talk.
Okay. Yeah. So, no rumor engine because of Eldar and 40k stuff. Right?
Correct.
Yep. We can talk about the new Rat Ogre, which is not really a Rat Ogre. It's the new orc, right?
No, there's a Rat Ogre. There's a real Rat Ogre.
Really? Where's it from?
Blood Bowl.
Did I miss this?
It's Blood Bowl. But it's just it's on the screen now for everybody. It's Blood
not
Bowl.
Really.
But
it's not.
But it is. Because yes, he's crushing like a tiny football in his hand, but like other than this tiny floppy football that's barely in his fist, which by the way would be completely easy to replace with any big fist. But anyways, it's just a Rat Ogre. It's just a Rat Ogre wearing armor. It's just a Rat Ogre.
I mean, that is a Rat Ogre. He's stitched up pretty heavily though.
Yeah, sure. A lot of them have stitches like that. That's actually pretty standard.
It shows you how many Rat Ogres I've painted.
I've painted a lot of them. I love Rat Ogres. They're one of my favorite units in the Skaven army. But here we are. But yeah, he's just, other than the tiny football in his right hand, he's a Rat Ogre. So we got a new Rat Ogre sculpt.
Let's talk about the other Skaven paintings, which are the Christmas orcs, or the Christmas orc, the brute. Dude, I love this guy. I saw him and I was like, oh, I'm totally buying him. And new Skaven models. So we get a new Skaven rat and a new Skaven head.
There's no less than 3 new Skaven models on this orc. The dead Skaven in the dirt that he has crushed, the giant rat chasing the little tiny goblin Noblar, whatever he is, Snotling, whatever, and the Rat Ogre head, which admittedly does not look good. But yes, there's more Skaven models in this than goblins. So there we go.
It's amazing. Mm-hmm. It's just amazing. And then, I like it. This is going to have a limited ordering window for those that don't know. You can pick it up live, I think, the week after Christmas. And then starting, I think it was January 3rd, you can order it for, like, made to order. So.
Nice.
Yeah, they're pretty sweet. I'm a fan.
Yeah, I don't know what I need with another brute, but...
You do. Is the answer. You just need more. It's fine.
Sure. I don't know what I'd want to do with a single brute besides turn him into another foot war boss, a thing of which I already have many. More than you could ever reasonably use.
Details. Other big news, Adepticon events got announced. The actual signups are on the 11th. A week earlier, the stuff will go into it'll be viewable so that you can actually a week or two earlier. Like, didn't they say the December 27th?
28th. Yeah, December 28th is the preview.
Yeah, 2 weeks. You can do. You can actually look at the catalog and get an idea. Obviously, there's going to be a ton of sweet events. There's the 4-person teams doubles event on Thursday, Friday. and then the championship is going to be Saturday, Sunday. I'm looking
If they
forward
still
to
have
that.
the same event lineup this year. I don't know that it's going to be like that this year. I'm not sure what, because it was going to change, if you remember, in 2020 before everything got canceled.
Right. So what I just quoted you of the doubles, all that was announced by Domus on Twitter.
Oh, okay, got it.
I haven't heard about championships but that was Thursday, Friday by Domus on Twitter. I haven't heard anything about championships, but I would assume that it's Saturday, Sunday.
I guess we'll see.
So, yeah, I'm excited. As well, they announced Golden Demon for Adepticon. It'll be the first time in the States in over 10 years. That's pretty exciting. And there'll be Forge World orders. If you want Forge World stuff, order by February and have it delivered. And they'll deliver it at the con for you if you want. So,
yeah, I can't wait to get back to Adepticon, honestly. And so, Tom, you're coming up this weekend along with a couple of other boys. It's VinnyCon 2021 Part 2, The Revengeing First Blood. This time it's for real. And Tom's going to be actually painting something probably for the first time in a long time this weekend. That's the goal.
I'm going to be building is the answer.
Sure. While Sam and John and I work on Golden Demon projects and talk Golden Demon a lot, there's going to be a lot of that discussion. I just want to warn you in advance.
I'm going to be painting sheet ghosts, and building and painting sheet ghosts is what I'm probably going to be working on.
Nothing wrong
because
with that.
my LRL order got delayed. So.
Ah, well, there we go. Such is the nature of the world. Delays, delays, delays.
Yep. So I have some. I've locked in my Night Haunt list. I got it. I cracked the code. Wizards galore, folks. That's the answer here.
That's the secret. Get out more casters.
More casters in Night Haunt. I figured it out. So I'm gonna do that, and then the plan is to do. I'm signed up for the event in Columbus, and the week before Havoc. So I'll have 2 back-to-back weeks of Warhammer in February. So I'm pretty stoked about that.
Indeed, I am as well. So both events. Yes, same thing. Looking forward to it. So it's going to be a great time there in February for Columbus, the Columbus tournament, and then Holy Wars, and then Adepticon the next month. So it's going to be a jam-packed February and March. Although, as usual, I can't play in the tournaments because I'm teaching. So
right, but that also means that I have to paint 2 armies for the beginning of February, not just one.
Better get working.
Yeah. So hence the Night Haunt, because that needs to happen, and I have most of those models.
Tom, have you heard about our Lord and Savior, the Sons of Behemoth? You know, there's only 4 models to get painting for that army. Very easy.
I've heard that, but they're giants, and they're really big. Sheet ghosts are airbrush and contrast paint. So
I mean, I guess. I don't know, man. I saw some... there was a... I don't remember who it was, so I apologize to the player who did it. But there was a giant army that he started the day before at NashCon, and on the judging sheet it said, "I painted this in the 24 hours before the tournament. Please be nice." And they looked really nice because he had just done he had used some airbrush and then painted and hard base coated everything, and then went mad with the streaking grime, and then he just did a little dry brushing on top, and it was great. It looked really nice. They were for what it was. I was very impressed for a 24-hour previous paint job. So it can be done, Tom. I'm just saying, the magic of streaking grime.
Neither of those armies are streaking grime for me. But the Night Haunt is airbrushing, and it's only 20 chain rafts and 10 Mirrormorn Banshee, or not Mirrormorn, 10, what are they called? Dread Scythe Harridans, and then a handful of heroes. So it should be easy and quick. So I'm not too stressed about it.
Okay.
Yeah, so, and then we have the other big news is the Nurgle Tome dropping on pre-order this Saturday. Dun, dun, dun! I am excited for Man Reed's book. That means that is imminent. Man Reed's book. And I'm excited for Nurgle stuff. I'm hopeful.
I am as well. We'll do our Nurgle show next week, because I'm sure we'll have all the information we need. So it'll be Nurgle next week. As we bring in.
I'm gonna miss Nurgle.
Well, not necessarily. You can just come back, but if you're available. So
yeah, I'm gonna do that.
I meant to talk to you about that before the show. If you're available next week, then we're gonna do the three of us. We'll all just do
Yes.
Nurgle together.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, yes, I am here. I want to talk Nurgle. It was my first AOS army, so yes, totally.
Right on. Okay, so look for Nurgle next week. Any other news? I think that's everything, right?
That's everything.
Pretty quiet week overall.
You talk. I'm gonna go see if I can find those headphones.
That's right. Well, you go get some headphones, Tom, while I do the pick of the week. Okay. So, let's talk some pick of the week, everybody, while Tom gets headphones and is responsible. He should have done that beforehand. But hey, here we are. So, the... my pick of the week is going to be for two teams, individuals, whatever. First, the Honest Wargamer and the Honest Wargamer Stats team, who we're going to rely on heavily today as we review a lot of this meta information. Two, AoS Shorts, Dan, who also gives great information and has an AoS Shorts events calendar where you can track all the events, like the events we're talking about going to in February and March. He has a big site. I have linked all of those down in the description. And I'll say it right now, and I'll say it again later. If you're interested in deeper dives on any of the stats we're going to go into, because we're going to cover this, talk about it at a fairly high level. But if you want to yourself take a deeper dive into these various elements, look at especially stuff like how individual armies are performing with a lot of really great segmented stats, go hit up the Honest Wargamer. And Shorts has a bunch of great stuff on his website as well. Both of those are linked down in the description. So do hit those up. Go check that stuff out. I linked both for Rob. I linked his Twitch. I linked the actual videos, the stats video in particular, where he does a deep dive. Where if you want to see how your army performed, if you're a Beasts of Chaos player and you're like, hey, how are those beasts doing? You can see it at a high level, but I want to get into the specifics. I love them beasts. I'm all beasts all the time. What's the story? What are people playing? How are they doing? Well, guess what? There you go. You can find all of that information. Okay. Let's see a lot of people in the chat excited about Nurgle. Hey, let me tell you what. If you're excited about Nurgle and the Nurgle show next week, or just Nurgle in general, don't forget to hit like and subscribe and all of that stuff. Do those things. Hit those buttons. It's good stuff. Tom is still not back with his headphone. Of course he isn't. I knew he would take longer than I would take. Why wouldn't he? So that's fine. We'll just keep going. What I'm going to say is... Dan said, cheers, now to go update the site. Yes, exactly. So what I'm going to say here, while we're waiting on Tom to get back and hook up his headphones, is I'm going to be launching a new survey here soon. It'll come out in between this week and the next show, probably, if I can get everything set up and reviewed. If not, it'll come out right after the next show, and I'll talk about it there. But we're going to do a big survey on... what do I want to call it? On perception of the game right now. So we want to do what we want to do here right before the December FAQ, and the game has been, let's face it, stable-ish because of the nature of not getting new books and stuff like that. So we're going to be doing that survey when it goes live. Do please share it around. Do please fill it out. Follow me on Twitter. The Twitter's up there in the corner. There it is right there. And I'll announce it there. I'll talk about it on the show next week. Once I launch it, it'll be open for 2 weeks, and then we're going to do a show on it in the new year. Okay? So, all right. Tom, you're back, and I can stop vamping.
You're doing great.
Thank you. All right. So, what's your pick of the week, Tom?
You already did pick of the week.
I did.
We moved on.
Oh, okay. You don't have one. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Got it.
No, we moved on. I missed it. I'm sorry. Maybe I'll get it next week when I'm here for the pick of the week.
I agree. All right, moving on. It's fine. I had two, so I covered both of us.
I know. You're dependable.
As always, Tom. As always. Let's talk hobby time. Tom, did you paint anything this week? This generally means no. This should be a real easy question.
It's been a long week. Let me just say that. I worked on putting together some models. So
All right, that's something. Building is something.
Lumineth have really long spears.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It like I knew that. Like I knew it in my soul, and I had seen the model before.
It's the difference between knowing the desert's hot and walking in the desert for a few hours without water. Yes.
Indeed.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. No, it's fine. I as well did a lot of assembling, and but I also finished up some painting. I got a bunch of stuff done actually. Working on some future videos, and now I just got this guy ready to go. Look at that, Tom. What is that guy? You recognize him?
I do.
Yeah, that's right. I'm gonna paint up this little spoilpox scrivener guy.
Why are you painting Nurgle?
Because I'm gonna paint it for Tom. For not you, Tom. Other Tom. He was.
Yeah.
He knows Nurgle is coming, and he has part of an army, but he doesn't have a lot of that stuff. So I picked that up for him, and I wanted to do it as like a Christmas thing for him because he's like, you painted 1 million models for one of our other club mates, and you've never painted anything for me. And I was like, oh, he's right. But of course, like he is a good painter, right? Like he paints himself. He just doesn't have much time anymore, and his paint desk is in disrepair thanks to his kids. So I was like, okay, so I'll do this for him. It's all good.
I know all about that.
Yeah, exactly. He can't keep a stable painting area because his young one likes to destroy everything. This is why I don't have children. So there you go. So I'm going to do that for him. And he's a funny little dude. And
He is cute.
It's Christmas time. You're supposed to do things for people. And what better to give somebody for Christmas than Nurgle, right? It's old grandfather Nurgle. He brings the joy. He brings the gifts.
It's the gift that keeps on giving.
Mm-hmm. And he asked me, he's like, if you paint anything, I want one of these things. I was like, all right, so that's fine. So I don't care that I'm saying it here in case he watches the show. I don't mind. Yeah. It's fine. He can know.
You're like, a 32 mil model?
Right. Yeah. He didn't ask for like a great unclean one. Yeah, exactly.
Just like, not even like a unit of 10. He's like, nah, I'll just take this 32 mil guy. And you're like,
done. I think this guy's on a 40 actually, but still, I take your beating. Yeah, because his scroll is real big.
You know what? It's not 10 plague bearers on 32s.
No, it's not. It's not. Although plague bearers are fantastically simple models, so
they are.
All right, so that's my hobby time. I've also been working a whole lot on something else, which nobody's going to know about until next year. So there you go. Ooh. But I've been working a lot on it. Get ready for that this weekend, Tom. Okay. So, hey, man. Look, that was fast. We blew right through that. And look, I say we just get right into it. Let's talk about...
Man, 20 minutes. Tyler, suck it.
Take that, Tyler. 20 minutes, we're flying through this. All right, let's talk about the meta overview. Arcus said, I know Vince doesn't play video games, but he should check out the new Slanesh trailer for Total War. I watched it. It was okay. That's my answer. I'm sorry. The Total War, animations don't really, get me very much. I apologize.
It's not the actual game.
Well, it's just... some of it's the game, some of it's just animations, and it just doesn't grab me.
Makes sense.
So... but, there's rumors that a new Warhammer MMO is being made, so... That's a rumor I'm interested in.
I don't know how to even respond to that.
There will never be another Age of Reckoning, but and all that it was. You can't go back.
There might be an Age of Sigmar though.
Sure, that's a deadhead sticker on a Cadillac right there. You just don't look back right there, okay? All right, so let's get into the meta overview. By the way, if you're watching and you haven't yet, don't forget, hit that like button, do all those things, press buttons. It's fun. Okay. So, Tom, we're going to talk about the meta. We're going to look at how armies are performing, and we're going to try to do a little bit of data synthesis here. Try to figure out why.
Yep.
Okay? We're going to give our opinions. Now,
it's kind of the popular thing to do, right?
It is the popular thing to do. As it says down at the bottom of the screen, brought to you by the Honest Wargamer team and AoS Shorts, because other people did a lot of hard work to collect this data, and then I stole it to talk about it. So, thanks. Other people for doing work.
We're lazy, and we appreciate your hard work.
We do, and that's my summary page here, which is to say all stats are courtesy of the Honest Wargamer, the awesome Honest Wargamer stats team, which is Warhammer Rob, Ziggy, and somebody else because I can never remember all three people, so I apologize. I forget a different person every time. But the awesome stats team and AoS Short Stand. And all their links are in the description. You should go visit them. You should sub to them. You should support them and all the hard work they do. Thank you, Windows. I'm good right now. Shut up. So all those links are down there. Do go check them out because it's their hard work that is allowing all of this to us to do this discussion. And I'm grateful that they're putting so much work into collecting this data. This isn't something we ever had before, and I loved seeing. I don't know if you saw it, Tom, but somebody asked Rob, Honest Wargamer Rob, about, or I guess they asked the Warcom team, what do you think about these kind of stats being collected? Are they too competitive focused? Is it useful to you? Is it a distraction? And Sam, the designer, the Warhammer designer,
Sam Pearson.
Yeah, Sam Pearson, responded back, we think it's super helpful. We really like this data. We find it very valuable. It's an important part of our overall understanding of the game.
Yeah.
And, and Rob said, hey, if you need any data, reach out. So I think they're going to try to share some data there, which is great. So totally. I think it can only help.
Sam's a great designer.
He is. We didn't mention that the Slaves of Darkness are getting their Tome, or not Slaves of Darkness, sorry, the Soulblight Gravelords are getting their Tome Celestial and White Dwarf. I didn't mention it because I hate all White Dwarf expansion articles and find them all to be utter terrible trash. Short answer for you there, Sammy. Sorry.
They're going to give a bunch of battle regiments that nobody likes. And by nobody, I mean anyone that's not Soulblight. Exactly. It's going to be like core battalions that are either useless or too good, because any new core battalions are bad. Grand strategies that are either bad or too good, and battle tactics that are either bad or too good. Thank you. Because there is no other setting, because there's only supposed to be the core ones, and yet we keep introducing these, and it keeps being toxic poison. We're just slowly drip feeding it into our veins. There we go. Here we go. All right. So, anyway, back to this. Tom, let's jump in with the first slide. Let's talk about the big overview. This is the win rate by faction. Okay? Yep.
So, this is where we draw what we call the Sinister Six from. The Sinister Six being... So we've talked before about the fat middle, right? Our initial goal back when things were wild, back at the beginning of second edition, was to push towards a fat middle, to push to 40 to 60%, right?
Yep.
Because we were way outside those bounds.
Right. But we've tightened it.
We've tightened it.
Yeah.
Which is good, but now we don't have anybody over 60 right now, which is amazing. But we still have some people falling out the bottom's end and just getting beaten up like crazy. And now we need to aim for the actual middle. Not the fat middle, the actual middle.
Right.
Which is 45 to 55, which is how most competitive type games try to balance themselves, right?
Yep.
So I do want to acknowledge the progress, right? We used to be way outside of the 40 to 60 rate. Do you remember, Tom, back when there was armies with win rates in the teens? Remember that?
Yeah. Do you remember, I think Slaanesh hit almost 80% at one point in time?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had things in the high 70s, things in the teens and 20s, like crazy. It was.
But we're not there anymore.
We're not there anymore.
We're in a good spot. Better spot.
There you go. I'll definitely agree with better. I think maybe good, but we can move from good to great. That's what I'll say, right?
How about those Iron Jaws only at 50?
Well, this is since the beginning of 3.0. Yeah. We'll talk about that in just a second. Sure. Believe me, we're gonna see them Iron Jaws. All right. So here's the 3 questions, Tom, I want to keep in mind today. Ready?
Yep.
Okay. So first I want to say this is based on 65 tournaments and 6,767 game results. I used all the high-level stats that are all based on those numbers.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
And
that's a good amount of games at the high level where we've probably reached statistical significance. Probably. The segmented data, when you look down into the individual armies and start doing, like, especially matchup data, you fall below statistical significance like that. Mm-hmm. Okay? Because you only have... So you have such a small number of matches, individual players, random results, things will pollute the data, and you're not getting cleanliness, right? So... Right. Rob's data can do that, and I love that he can show those matchups, but we need to, and there's nothing wrong with it, but we need to understand that the more drilled in we go, the less confidence. Yeah, we should have a lower confidence factor in the data, right? When we do data analytics, we talk in confidence factors, right? Mm-hmm. And the confidence factor on these results, the upper results, is pretty high, right? This couldn't be accidentally random, effectively, right? We should have weeded out the noise at this point.
Not necessarily. I mean, what we don't have here is we don't know how many times, for example, Big Wog was played.
Sure. My point being is that, yes, you're right. There is a count separately. I have. And all these have a pretty good number of matches, by the way. Like, I did dig through how much each of these have, and there's a couple of them that are pretty low, right? Mm-hmm. But for the most part, I think all of these have reached some level where we can, like, okay, none of these have been played like 3 times, is my point. Right. These all represent, I think, we have more than 100 matches with all of these.
Right.
Which, again, is low, but some of these have a lot, hundreds and hundreds.
Sure.
Okay. Sure. It is inequitously distributed.
Yep.
Yeah?
We're looking at you, Seraphon.
So, yes, but your point is well taken. It shouldn't be taken as Bible truth that these are all this exact percentage.
Right.
What we should understand this to be is a rough map, because you're absolutely right. There could be, if you more games played, stuff like that. There is still a little bit in there, right? Our confidence factor still isn't 100% or something like that. Something nonsensical, of course. This is our best approximation based on the amount of data we have. And what I'm saying is I think we're probably reaching the point where plus or minus a few percentage points, this is correct.
Sure.
Right?
Sure. Yeah, and I mean, just from a feels standpoint, like the Sinister 6, that feels right. Like, those are the... maybe Legion of Chaos Ascendant is the only one that I'm like, eh. Well,
so... and I'm trying to keep up with the comments at the same time I say all this. The Sinister 6, part of the reason we may be having things cap at about 60% is because they're all very good at killing each other.
Right.
The nature of each of these, and when you one of the things Rob's data does show really well, and we'll talk about the top tier, the middle tier, and the bottom tier later on.
Yeah.
But one of the things he does show is that you can see actually how good these armies are against the top tier. Right. Who has win rates against that stuff. And that's pretty interesting. Because they do hunt each other often, and some of them are better against the top than others. Like, there's clearly gatekeeping happening, right? Like, Seraphon is stopping Suns from going higher.
Yep.
Right? Because they can bring down the Giants easily, and Coalesced Thunder Lizard is a really strong counter to the Giants' damage.
Yeah, it is.
Right?
Yeah.
So you do have some interesting rock, paper, scissors happening up at the top. Right?
Yep.
Other thing we should say is that this is all data since 3.0 started. And as you already asked, how about that Ironjaws number? Something might have happened with Ironjaws since the launch of 3.0. Right?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Like,
they got a book and got real strong. Right?
Yep.
So one of the things that's important to understand is that the nature of the AoS meta is pretty ephemeral. Right? Between the balanced data slate we're expecting, between books coming out, and disruption in the meta, we don't want to get too married to any of these percentages because armies will go up and down over time. Their win rates will vary quite a bit. and weekend to weekend, month to month, right, quarter to quarter. And
yeah, like all those Nighthaunt armies that just started showing up.
exactly. And so these things, when you average them out, you kind of lose those valleys and those high points, right?
Yeah, those peaks. Yeah.
And so, those things mean that we also have to look at trending over time and stuff like that, which is a little more. I'm going to get into a little bit of that today, but we're not going to get into all of it. Okay. So, all right.
Cool.
When we talk about why we think armies are like this, we're going to enter in the world of opinion. We cannot talk about causation. We can talk about some correlation here and there. There's not enough data, and there's not enough information for us to talk about hard causation. But we're going to take our best guess, do some punditry, effectively, right, on why we think these things are like this.
Mortal wound shooting.
Well, we're going to frame this way, Tom. Here we go. You ready?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
When we talk about an army being really good or really bad, like really high or really low in this, okay, we're going to ask this question. Is it a skew or a unit pushing them up, keeping them alive, whatever? They could be in the middle because of this, right?
Yep.
But is it a skew or a unit pushing them up? Is it their overall design being really strong or really weak? Right? Like, in other words, there's no really good units, there's no really bad units. Just the book taken as a whole, their design is just super strong or super weak.
Right.
Okay.
Is it like a self-contained problem or self-contained strength?
Yeah, it's just like the only way to fix it would be to literally throw the book in the garbage and start over. Right? Because the design from the bottom up is rotten. Okay.
Yep.
Or is it points? Right? Is the army across the board too cheap? Classic example of all three of these. Let's just give a classic quick example of all three of these, okay?
Yep.
The skew or unit. I don't want to talk current meta, I'll talk past, right? The skew or unit, or something like that, right? Like a single skew build.
Yeah.
All right?
Lumineth?
Well, yes, but that's current, right? I wanted to go older than that. So I was going to talk about what was our Stormcast setting up Liberators in combat nonsense?
Oh, the Vanguard Wing.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a great example of a skew, right? One unit, one broken battalion type of setup or whatever it was equals.
Or like Tzeentch Change Host.
Sure, Tzeentch Change Host. Great example, right? Single unit, single rule, single battalion, carrying the whole thing. Yep.
Yep.
Overall strong design, right? When you look at that, that's probably like classic Slaves to Darkness or something like that, or design in the meta. Points would be like Skaven when they first launched. With their new book, right? Where everything was very, very cheap and it went into a meta where it was very, very scary. Right? Okay.
Yep.
All right. So, Tom, here we go. Let's talk about the Sinister Six. Sons of Badmount, Legions of Chaos Ascendant, Disciples of Tzeentch, Lumineth Realm Lords, Daughters of Cain, and Seraphon. All arguably at the absolute top of where we would want at or above where we would want win rates to be, frankly. All trending high. All very powerful armies. Right, like if you've ever faced these, just prima facie, these armies are quite powerful, right? Yep. And they've held a steady place here, by the way, in the top 6 as I looked at this over time. Okay, Tom, Sons of Behemoth, skew, design, points. Why is it at the top of the list?
Skew.
Okay, why so?
Well, I guess I can't say skew. I guess it would be design.
That would be my argument. It's completely design, right?
Yeah, because it's a combination of the objective holding rules, because we're specifically in a meta that's a low body meta. And so just the actual design itself gives them an edge over everybody, just natively. Like if we were back in like, hashtag horde armies.
Yeah, right? Hashtag horde meta.
Horde meta. Right. Like if we were back there, these giants would have been like, like your 30 are on there. That's great. I'm going to push 60 Skaven onto this objective and just take it from your giant, and just let you chop it rats forever. But that's not the world we're in right now, where most objectives are being held by 5 to 10 man units. So I think that it's a design problem, but I think it's also a combination of that and the. I think that there's there's some problems. There's a confluence of things that are all leading it to where it is. So,
Okay.
for example, we have the Amulet of Destiny.
Yep, sure.
Like the efficiency of Amulet of Destiny on one of those giants is just asinine.
Mm-hmm.
And then realistically, the army is a DPS check.
Yep.
And some armies just simply can't put out that kind of the damage that's needed to actually remove giants in enough time to take
To kill a giant around. Yeah.
Right. Like that's what you have to do. You have to remove a giant every round, starting in round 2.
Okay. I agree with all that. I think that's exactly right. I think it's just design. And I've said before, I think the base design of the Sons of Badmat book is flawed. They started from a faulty premise in giving them the mightier makes rightier, and every bad decision in that book flowed from that. Right. Now, the next one is Legion of the First Prince. Rob is obsessed with calling this Loka. It's not Loka anymore. It's now just the Legion of the First Prince. I don't know why he still calls it Legion of Gas Ascendant. It's now Legion of the First Prince.
It's Loft.
Yes, Loft.
Sure.
Yes, correct.
Sure.
Skew designer points. Let's keep him at the top.
I don't know. I don't even know why it's up there.
Can I offer a supposition?
Yeah.
My supposition. This is my opinion purely of what holds them here. Okay. Loft is the only blue deck in the meta right now.
Oh, okay. I can see that.
Okay. And design wise, it's quite sparse. That is to say, it is actually design allowing a skew. So it's a little bit of cheating, I'm going to say here. The design is you can pile all these different demons together and give them all a ward save, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
What it allows is the terrible trio to enter into the discussion. The terrible trio of the Sinister Six. The terrible trio being Be'lakor, Kairos, and the Khorne Demon Prince. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you can just say no to so many different things, many melee armies just instantly fail and die to this army because they can't ever charge.
Right.
You actually land the long bomb charge you need when you're under blood slick ground, and Kairos just goes, nope, that was a 1-year-old.
Right.
Be'lakor shuts your key unit down for a round, so it doesn't even get to function.
Right. They just never get in.
Right. Exactly. And everything is tough, and they just gum up the works with the little stuff. They also summon quite efficiently.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just gum in the works, and then
just pure frustration.
and then pure control.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like they win with crappy units and 3 big control elements, right?
Yeah.
Which is just it's the most pure blue deck I've ever seen. Right? They've got Counterspell and Mana Drain and I don't know, let's say Mana Leak or something. I don't know. You pick your poison, right?
Sure. Force of Will.
Force of Will, thank you. Perfect. They've got all yes, that's a great example. They've got all 3 of those in their hand all the time basically, right? Yeah. And then everything else is just win rate or is just win drakes.
Yeah. Sure.
Right? But the 2/1 flyer will get there or whatever if he can, or the 2/2 flyer will get there.
Or win drakes.
If there's nothing, if the opponent can't resolve anything, right?
Right.
And I do agree that Legion of the First Prince can still be. It's funny what kills it, but it is a very it can be a knife edge thing. Like if somebody can blow through your control as classic, right? If with control, what often killed control was people who could just burn through it fast, who could outstrip them, right? Sly or something like that. They could just plow through them before they could get their control in place.
Yeah.
Right.
Get their handful. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. IT said we checked off the magic reference real quick. Yes, that's your bingo spot right there. So that's what we do here. Okay. Disciples of Tzeentch. Why is this still here? What's keeping this here?
Pink cores.
Yeah. So is it skew? Is that the thing? Or is it design?
I mean, anytime you have an army that cheats, it's going to be strong.
Sure.
And I mean, I think that there are some skew elements that are still just really strong.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I would say. Because I mean, we're talking almost all demons, right? Like we don't have many Archeon, Zinchi, mortal stuff performing, right?
I mean,
Like after they changed Archeon.
it's not as common, no, but it's still mostly in Host Arcanum, which is why I'm going to argue for design. Caleb's in the chat, the Lord of Change himself, and he said, Zinch baby, no pinks required. Like he's famously done quite well with a list with, basically no pinks, right?
Right.
And not that he hasn't played pinks. He plays Zinch a lot. He's played many versions of it, but
I've only played a lot of those.
Like, I'm going to argue that Zinch, because of the nature of its design, it has been pretty reflexive.
Yeah.
Because it cheats resilient for a living. It's resilient in that there's always something it can exploit, right? Yeah. It was Archeon for a while, or it was Change Host for a while, and then it was Archeon for a while, or it was Flamers, right? And now it's maybe or it was and is Pinks.
Archers, yeah.
Sure. Like there's something it's going to be able to exploit because it is a book that it was Cogs for a hot minute, right? Ramping up to 8 million casts.
Yep, the Cogs Castle.
Sure, the Cogs Castle. But ultimately the strong design of like the Destiny dice, the agendas, and the potent casting, creating this like 18-inch kill box around the army and empowering that to happen almost consistently throughout the history of it, sort of depending on what you're using, especially in the hands of like Host Arcanum, where you're getting 3 free auto dispels, right, and a free unit.
Yep.
It's just
and you're sitting on Destiny dice as well. So yes, you have 3 auto dispels, and you can pick your dispel. Oh, and if you have Lord of Change, they're going to match their dice. Yada yada yada.
Right. And it's, I think the telling part of this is how little Archeon we've seen recently. Like, Archeon got his Eye of Ed Sheeran nerfed, and all of a sudden he just stopped showing up in Zinch lists overnight.
Weird.
And it didn't really matter that much. Zinch has gone down a little, but we're going to look at their trend over time, and it hasn't been, huge.
Yep.
Like, they end up being resilient. They just, throughout the history of this book, because its premise is I cheat,
right,
it's just consistently always been at the top.
Yep, I would agree with that.
That's why I argue. It's design, right? Because once if some current thing gets whack-a-moled, it'll be something else, right?
Yep.
Who knows? Maybe post the data slate, it'll be Zangor. Maybe we'll go back to Zangor. It could happen, Tom.
Don't get my hopes up. Sure. I wanted an all Zangor army, and I was going to build one, and then I was waiting for the new book, and they dropped the new book, and I'm just like, well, I'm selling all those.
Hey, I'm just saying, hope, Tom. The bird boys, they could be back anytime. It would be very easy, because the bird boys are only bad because of points. So that's it.
Yeah, but we've literally been saying that for 4 years.
They're only because their points haven't been efficient for 4 years. But at any rate, sure. All right. Lumineth Realm Lords. Skew, design, points. What's keeping them? Oh, okay. Design. All right. Okay. Tell me why.
It's so design. Because, it's design that leads to skew. And what I mean by that is, there's 2 standout shenanigans there. And it's your Sentinels. And it's your foxes. Those 2 things, because of the design of those units, they lead to certain play styles that, shall we say, are not fun, or that are hyper efficient. And so I think that that's ultimately where the problem is, combined with all of the tools, right? There's just a lot of very efficient tools spread throughout the army, and it's 6 sub-factions, 8 sub-factions now?
Is this better, big FAEC? Tell me if the sound is better. I was leaning back a little far away from my mic, and it's very sensitive to that kind of thing. Sorry, I'll try to stay right in this zone. Hopefully that's better, everybody. I apologize if I got too quiet.
And Sentinels, yes, they're really good, but let's not forget that Foxes took some events, right? And Foxes were Fox Force 5, right?
Sure. Fox Force 5,
it was a thing. It was a thing, and And one of the challenges there is that like they don't play the same game that everybody else does. So there is some design, like in the design of LRL is cheating. And what I mean by that is that like, oh, archers, but you don't need line of sight. Archers, but it all does mortal wounds.
Mm-hmm.
And you get to reroll. And you mortal wound on 5. Archers at 30-inch range. So like a combination of all of these things just really push it over the top. Or a bunch of foxes which are like, move back to 12 inches. Okay, stop your movement, and then in my movement phase, move back at the end of the movement phase, move back 12 inches. And it's just a perennial, like it's a design problem.
Okay. My argument is this. I actually think it's skew, and I'll say why. Because I think it is archers, techless, and foxes. And I think it's the only thing keeping them where they are.
I think it's the only thing making the army viable.
Right. That tells me it's skew right there.
Right.
Right?
Well,
because here's what I'll say.
Sure.
Let's do a thought experiment. Nerf those 3 units into the ground. I'm not saying I want this. Okay?
Yeah.
I'm just saying let's pretend. Okay?
Yep. The army drops to 40%.
Right.
The army drops to 40% overnight.
Yep.
Because the other units are too expensive, and they actually don't do the things that you need them to do.
I don't know if it'd rocket all the way down to 40, but it'd fall a lot.
No, it would if they didn't because they are a overwhelmingly expensive army. I know this because I'm building it.
Absolutely.
And so for like the bodies that you get, like for example, if Techless couldn't pass out a ward save, if then the wardens are truly dead in the water. Like 145 points for 10 wounds. No, thank you.
Yeah, believe me, I understand.
Like splash mortals will melt them off the table.
Sure.
And so I
mean, Slanesh pays the same price for 10 Daemonettes, but sure.
Right. And you know how successful that is.
Yeah, it's terrible. You understand your unit's a little better. But no, we both agree. Like what exactly percentage they would land at, who knows? It's all thought experiment, right? But they would drop like a rock. That's the reality, right? That's why I'm saying it's skew. Because those 3 units, being what they are, being able to deliver ranged mortals, control the game in a very specific way. This is the only other, like, Lumineth is a white-blue deck.
Right.
Yeah.
No,
keep these magic references going.
It is literally a white-blue deck that doesn't do very much damage at all.
Mm-hmm.
It has quite a bit of control, quite a bit of survivability, some hinky tricks, and it's infuriating to play.
Yeah, so that's my point. If you nerfed those 3 units into the ground and didn't compensate the army in some way, it would just start losing like crazy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think that right there tells me it's skew. That's what I'm saying. I mean, it's got a convoluted, crazy design with a lot of insane stuff happening, but it's going to all amount to nothing if you have no way to actually do the work to win. You'll do a lot for nothing. It was all sound and fury signifying nothing, right?
Yeah.
That's what's going to happen.
Yeah, like I hear that you're saying it's skew. I think it's a combination of skew and design.
Okay.
I don't think it's just skew. Because they're not just trotting out only the armies aren't only sentinels.
Sure. No, I understand. There's other stuff in there.
Only foxes, right? But it's that a handful of units are probably too efficient for what they're doing.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Daughters of Cain. What is it? Why are they up at the top? Why have they been at the top, Tom, for 4.5 years?
I have some internal thoughts as to why that is.
Skew designer points. What's holding them there right now?
Design.
Yeah.
It's Marathi plus teleports plus bow snakes.
Yes. Like, the easy answer would be skew, and because bow snakes are super dominant. Don't get me wrong, okay? Like, they're way too dominant, they're way too good, they're a super skewy unit, they show up in everything. But I would argue if we properly costed bow snakes and got rid of the double shot, I think daughters would fall. It would. It rightly should. Like, all of these should fall. I think that's an important thing to realize, right? When we talk about nerfing these top armies, they're going to have to fall. They must lose more. They must become weaker. Right? Like, yeah. that's what's got to happen, right? Like, I'm sorry, Doc players, but your book has to get worse in some way.
Yeah, and like it's just they have a pretty deep bench, though, is what I would say.
Yes, and that's why I don't think they would fall like Lumineth. Because in the same experiment, that's what I'm saying. Like, let's say nerf bow snakes out of existence. Okay,
sure.
I think the army
delete
falls.
the unit.
Sure.
If delete
there are
the
300
unit.
points for 5 of them now, or whatever. Okay, just like impossible.
Right. Make the unit non-viable. Guess what? That army still shows up, and we'll take some 5-0s.
Yeah, I think it will still occasionally win, and my answer is I think it would fall to probably more like a 50% or somewhere in that range. Like, it would fall down into the middle, like right where we'd want it in the middle, pretty safely. I think it's that single unit skew that's posting it up, but I think there's a firm design underneath it, because there is good internal balance in the book, other than this one stupid unit empowered by this one stupid command ability that shouldn't exist. And that's what's actually tipping it from the middle to the fat middle, right? That's what's knocking it up.
Yeah.
Right.
But, and those, like, all of those armies are simply relying on that trick.
Yeah. It's become the dominant choice.
Like, hit more bow snakes.
Right. Right. Yeah. Sometimes they're not even using Marathi anymore. They're just literally subbing out Marathi for tons more bow snakes.
Yeah. I don't. Yep.
So, because you can get a lot, turns out, for Marathi. Like, if you just trade Marathi for bow snakes, you get a ton of them.
I can't imagine.
Okay, last one. Seraphon. Skew design points. What's keeping it in the Sinister Six? While you think, I'm going to answer Nick R's question. Vince Venturella, why do you hate Fire Slayers? Because they are ugly, samey, baby, naked dwarves with an aesthetic I find deeply unpleasing, that also have an awful, awful playstyle from top to bottom that is the thief of joy to play against.
And they have a sparse composition for actual, like, army stuff. They have 3 real units and then 15 heroes.
Now, that being said, I do like the Magma Droths. Those look cool. Those are cool.
So what I would say is this. I think that it's a design issue.
Okay.
Regarding Seraphon. And not in a bad way. I think that some of the design is good, right?
Sure.
I just think that it's super efficient against some of the big stuff in the list, or big stuff in the meta. So, for example, we talk giants. Obviously, Coalesce is super efficient. The reason why Starborn is it Starborn? That's the teleporty ones.
Starborn are the teleporty ones. Coalesce are the
Starborn are like anytime you get teleporting and shooting, really good.
Sure. And
that's what Starborn are, right? Like, that's what Starborn does well, is mobility shooting. So, like, mobility / deep strike shooting. It's just literally KO's trick. So that's all design issues. Like, I guess you could say that their points, they could jack the points up to be unusable, but ultimately, like, you're doing that because of design.
Yeah, Seraphon's an interesting case because it is, to me, it's here and it's at this point. It does have a few units that are obviously too good.
Yep.
Sally's being at the top of that list.
Sally's, but they've been there for a while and they nerfed them on points once and it still didn't do anything.
Right.
Like, it's a design issue.
I agree.
Like, it's a design of, like, mobility plus.
Yeah, ultimately, I agree that the book is so, and I think this is exactly what Curran said. It's so layered, it's so thick with different potential synergies. You've seen the rise of Coalesced and Thunder Lizards coming in strong. Again, having a very good answer to a lot of multi-damage, to a higher, multi-damage meta. Having a lot of power projection in range damage, being able to excel. Like, that is to say, when we look at the overall design, it also pairs very well into the existing meta. Right? Yep. Having monsters that can do ranged damage and pick up battle tactics and bonus points at range is incredibly powerful. Right? They just have a lot of things going for them.
Totally. I would agree with that.
I think Seraphon's one of the tougher books to sort of, if you were interested in bringing it down some. It's actually
think that
an interesting challenge to do so.
It's a Zinch problem, right?
Right.
Just because there's so much flexibility in that book, and it's a combination of abilities and war scrolls and all of those things that bring about the efficiency.
Yeah.
And so like you could like, and so maybe the right answer, by the way, is points.
Yeah, to compensate by moving things up some, because I mean, arguably Sally's are still too cheap.
Right.
You know, there are some things in the army that might be still too cheap, even slightly.
Like, I think you solve multi-layer problems like that with the blunt instrument of points.
Sure.
You just move everything up 5% or 10%. You know, like you just inch it up a little bit, and then suddenly, like that extra unit doesn't fit.
Right. Especially when so much of the army is getting its power, not universally, but a lot of the army pulls its power from synergy as well.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And so, you know, it's always hard to point highly synergistic armies, because the unit on its own, out without buffs, is garbage. The unit with all the buffs is like insane, off the charts, amazing, ridiculous, right? And like finding the line between the two is really hard often.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Okay. All right, now we're going to skip the middle. 1, 2, skip a few, 99, 100. And I want to go down to the bottom of this, Tom. Okay? And we're going to talk about the 6 at the bottom.
Okay.
Okay?
Oof. Yep.
So we start with Night Haunt.
Yep. Oh, Night Haunt.
Hit me, Tom. Why is this down at 40%? You like this army. You're building this army to play this army. You think it's competitive.
Like I think it is. I think it is a competitive. I mean, and I was reaffirmed by the fact that Bill Souza took it not too long ago and did fairly well. And we've had recently 2 events 5-0 with Night Haunt. And so I think that ultimately Night Haunt is a victim of dice. So I think it's a design issue. Let me just say that, because I think it's a combination of its strategic or key abilities are completely dice dependent. Mainly the double pile in on charge when you roll a 10+, and 10 is a fairly hard number to roll, and you can't modify that anymore with battalions like you used to. So that's a part of a problem. I think that it suffers actually there's some bad design in there. Like, I'll go out and say this. The issue of all of the buffs in the army are wholly within 12. And by definition, you have so you have an army that's deep striking at 9 inches, right?
Sure.
And then around those 9-inch heroes, you have a bubble of bonuses. But if everybody's coming up at 9 and they charge, you have a very small edge that you that of contact, and then if you pile out of it, you're not wholly within 12, and everybody loses the buff. And so you actually end up running into a problem where the buffs don't actually function because you end up piling out of. If you actually get into combat, you pile out of the buffs.
I understand.
Yeah, and so you run into this issue of you can't actually keep any of your buffs, or heaven forbid, you go in the charge phase, actually double, get your pile in there, right? You're now out of range of the wholly within 12 to get the bonus attack from your Knight of Shrouds on Ethereal Steed. And so it's just a combination of a bunch of different things all plying against you, right? That said, there's a lot of mobility. There's a lot of tricks in the army, and that can win you games.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. Fundamentally, I think this is a design one, and especially how the design pairs with the current meta, right? They can't use all-out defense, stuff like that, right? It's hard. They can't play the save stacking game to keep their heroes alive that everybody else can, right? You've got your hero's got a 4-up. Your hero's got a 4-up. That's what it is.
Right.
It's a 4-up.
Right. Yeah. That's a good call. They don't get to be a part of the save stacking game.
Right.
They have no resilient heroes.
Right.
I've talked about this before.
Yep.
They have no real heroes over 8 wounds.
Yep.
Is there another army in the game that's like that?
Probably not.
Right. Everybody has a monster.
Sure. Or something.
Right. And so
I guess your other choice in that same situation would be Kharadron Overlords, but they play a very different game.
Yeah, they're playing a different game, and so
like they also have a bunch of weak heroes. Like their boats aren't heroes, right?
Right.
They also have a bunch of weak heroes,
Yep.
but
Yep.
everything in their army shoots, so they don't have to risk as much to deliver
Right.
themselves.
And their heroes, and like most of their buffs aren't concentric on their heroes. You know, like that's part of the problem of Nighthaunt is that your heroes have to be close to give the buffs. But if the heroes are close to give the buffs, they're also within threat of dying to at least shooting, if not melee. And there's none of them are high wounds,
Right.
and they can't play the save stacking game. So there's just a combination of those things. And then on top of all of that, like their death save requires a hero to be wholly within 12 of a hero.
Right.
And so like they don't even get the resiliency that the other death saves get. And so it's a combination of a bunch of different small factors, design factors, that all really hurt Nighthaunt.
Yep.
I think that like I spent a lot of time building lists. I don't know that points are the issue. I always, obviously, like whenever you build a list, you always wish there were 5 or 10 more points or whatever. So I don't generally have that problem with Nighthaunt. I will say I do have a problem with having a reliable hammer. The army really struggles with having a hammer, and so yeah, like so it's just again it's a bunch of these small things that like it's not bad. It's just like there are holes.
Yeah, well, I want to pick on 2 things that I think are common among the sad 6, the sucky 6, the sullen 6. I don't know. Nighthaunt, Skaven, Heed Knights, Bone Splitters, Beasts, and Gloomspite.
Yep.
All of them have a hammer problem.
Yeah.
Every one of them.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yep.
Like, current new Bone Splitters, basically trash hammers now because of the way they nerfed I mean, it's barely an army anymore, but the way they nerfed the Big Stabbas, right? Nighthaunt have a classic hammer problem. Skaven absolutely have a hammer problem outside of... The only potential hammer you have is in the silly Stormfiend build, which is a bad build that just doesn't actually work because it's made of paper and it relies on casting a spell from a non-bonus caster, basically.
Right.
Heed Knights hits like a feather. Honest answer. Like there's no hammers left in Slaanesh anymore. The Keeper of Secrets is the closest thing to a hammer we have is Sigvald. Okay.
Yeah.
Because he's going to be way more effective than anything a Keeper of Secrets does. I mean, the Keepers they were always noodle armed unless they spiked off. But to make this real for everybody, a Keeper's average damage is 7.5 against a 4-up save.
Wow.
That's nothing. That's nothing.
Right.
Fulminators are like 20.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, it's not even close. Beasts, same problem, right? Like, they have a bunch of units. Most of them don't hit very hard. Even their Bestigors lack, real damage punch. And Gits, same thing. Now, Gits can sometimes get around that. Like, some Trolls can hit pretty hard, but then when you go to that, then if you lean into some of your quote-unquote hammers and Gits, then you have a lot of other challenges.
Right. Like, you could go heavy, spear, mortal wound... like the whole Gits, like power groups. But again, it takes like 4 units to make 1 unit of spears effective.
Yes, and then is Gludos a hammer? Not really. No, he has slightly higher damage. Gludos' average damage against a 4-up save is 9.5, maybe 10. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. It's somewhere around there. He's more of an anvil. Like, he doesn't do a lot of damage. Nothing in that army does damage anymore. Anyways.
Yeah, and on top of that, like I think that there's probably another hidden issue here of coherency. Yes.
So those are the other 2 things I was going to say. There's another commonality here. Nighthaunt, Skaven, Bone Splitters, Beasts, and Gloomspite, Heed Knights is the only one that's exempted from this, all to some degree suffer from two challenges: coherency and reinforcements.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Because
you, like, all of them want to be... These are all armies that relied on having a lot of stuff, like a lot of bodies in big units. And with 4 reinforcement points, they just can't actually build their army anymore. Like, for the most part. Nighthaunt, depends on what you were going for. You can still, get close. Like, you're not as bad off, but especially if you're trying to do goblin heavy
you have
kits.
to lean. Yeah.
Right.
Yep. You have to lean into MSU on Night Hunt. Like, there's not any really other way around it. But on top of that, yes, you don't have enough reinforcement points, but also coherency is a really big issue. Like when you have
32 mil bases in a 1-inch reach, as a lot of these armies do.
That's exactly right. 32 mil bases on a 1-inch reach or cav. Like hex wraiths, by definition, go in 7 across with 2 sideways in the back, and then one reinforcing those 2. Like, that's how you have to go in with hex wraiths on a 10-man block.
Sure.
Otherwise, the unit falls apart. Like, it can't actually get into combat. And so, even if you reinforce it, 30% of your unit can't actually fight.
Yep. And so, like, and by the way, that's not equitous. That's all of that is, my point is trying to grab at these, like, core problems. Lack of a hammer, hit hard by reinforcements, coherency challenges, right? All these armies down here, to some degree, got hit with those things, right? Some much more than others. Right. And the funny part is that these, I think, like, fundamentally, there's a lot of design as it meets the new edition rules here, and it just shows how poorly it worked for these armies, right? Like, we put this new rule in place.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, like, there were going to be winners and losers.
Right.
And these are the losers.
These are losers. Right.
Right? I mean, it's that straightforward. And, you know, we've talked about ways to fix this in past shows. I'm not going to get into it.
Right.
But, like, there is a consistent problem going down this list. Now, a couple exceptions I will say, so we don't have to blow through these individually. Like, Bones, like, everything also has its own story to tell. I think those are the roll-up issues. But, like, to me, Skaven actually has a points problem in the wrong direction. Like, things are too expensive in the book right now. They got, you know, consistently moved up and up and up and up.
Right.
Through many iterations. Yep. And now, as the ground shifted underneath them, they suddenly are now way too expensive for what you can buy. They also have the reinforcement issue. But Skaven, I think, could be a viable army. But you just don't get enough for what you should be getting. Okay?
Right. I would agree with that.
Their monsters are, like, ridiculously overcosted for what their monsters can accomplish right now. Their monsters hit like feathers, and they cost, you know, middle 300 points, like, as though that's a thing.
Yep.
Heed Knights is just straight trash design from top to bottom, so whatever, that's fine.
Pain. They like pain.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's whatever. It's a bad book. Bone Splitters just got railed in their last update.
Yep.
For seemingly no reason.
Like, this isn't a real army.
Apparently. Beasts of Chaos haven't gotten love for a really long time, obviously, and they're suffering. They and Gloomspite have, like, some of the most intense versions of the systematic rules.
Yeah.
Right? So, to me, that's the story, right? Like, the roll-up story of what's happening at the bottom is where design meets the current rule set and the current meta, and there's just, like, it's a square peg round hole. It ain't happening. Right. You're gonna end up down here, and you fall out of the bottom because it's just very, very hard to get wins.
To perform.
Yeah.
Right.
And yes, we could mess with things. Like I said, I do think Skaven could be salvageable by points, and they could be stronger. You know, like, there's stuff we could do. And I'm hoping that the Sullen 6 here, I think that's what somebody said. I like Sullen 6. I think that's nice. I think the Sullen 6 could see attention could see some improvement. Let me put it that way. Mm-hmm. Some improvement. If they get proper attention in the data slate in the upcoming balance change.
Yeah, I mean, I hear that. I don't know that there's any magic bullets here, though. And
there's not.
The problem, because it's so much of the problem is how these armies impact the core 3.0 rules.
I completely agree, but in the balance change, they could do things like, say, this, and this army get double the normal number of reinforcement points. Like, they could do things like that.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I'm not saying they will. I'm just saying, like, it's in their power. It's just a rule. You can write whatever stupid rule you want. Okay?
It's words on a piece of paper. This isn't rocket science, right? Okay. So that's the overall win rate, and our take on them. Let's go to the next one here. This one wasn't on your original one I sent you, Tom, because I updated this last night after I sent it to you, because that's what I always do. I send by the way, just so everybody understands, behind the curtains, I work real hard in the days leading up to the show to make a nice presentation, send it out, and then no, Tom doesn't do anything. And then I read it again. I step away from it. I read it again the day of the show and realize there's more stuff I want to say or add, and change the presentation a bunch, and I don't send out a new one.
Right. So. That is true. And so what ends up happening is I end up looking at it at the first time as we're going through the show.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay. 4+ wins. This comes from our good friend Dan at AoS Shorts. So this is tracking 4+. So 4 or 5 wins.
Yep.
And aggregating that together. Total games and what it represents as a percentage.
Oh,
right?
Night Haunt. Look at you. Down at the bottom.
Well, they're not all the way down at the bottom. They got 5. They're doing better than Hedonites, Flesh Eaters, and Gloomspite, so that's nice. Because this one only tracks those that are 4+, there are people who just don't appear on this list at all, right?
Sure. Sure.
But here, it's interesting, because you get a different top when you look at it.
Right.
There's some stuff's the same, right? Like Seraphon, Sons, Lumineth, Daughters, Disciples, all up here, right?
Yeah,
Now,
I mean,
because this is based on count, right? Just raw number. Remember, this is based on count, not percentage, like the last one we did was. Okay.
Not only that, like Orc Warclans are bundled together.
Yes,
where Bone Splitters, do they count as Warclans? Because they're in the Warclans book?
Yes. Dan has this all rolled together because the way he's assembling it.
Yeah, he's aggregating it, yeah.
Now, we're going to look at a really fun slide in the next one, Tom. Okay?
Sure.
But I just want to say, like, the point is when you go by count, it presents a different picture than percentage. Right?
But there are some commonalities.
Right? 5 of the 6 are the same in both.
Yep.
Right? That says something. Right? Whether we're talking about just putting pure wins on the board, like raw number, or win rate as a percentage of all games played.
Yep.
5 of the 6 armies, like these 5 armies, keep swimming to the top.
Yep.
Right? And it's funny because Legion outstrips its meta percentage so much. Like we'll I think we have some meta representation later on. And you'll see, like, Legion does not have a wide presence in the meta for obvious reasons. It's a weird army that doesn't even have its own book. It's this strange control army, right? Like, and it so overperforms its meta representation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So this one, what I thought was fascinating about comparing this, when you look at the difference between, just win rate as a percentage of all games played versus count of times they've achieved this. Right, like Seraphon have had 71. That's an insane number, right? 71 times.
4+ runs.
Yeah, 71 4+ runs. That's so many, right? That's so very many.
Night Haunt have had 5.
They have had 5, yes, but it is madness to look at the difference between the top and the bottom when you look at it by raw count, right?
Yeah. It makes me want to play Gloomspite.
Sure. Go for that underdog.
One of the 3.
Like if you 4+ with Gloomspite, you can you will single-handedly move the needle, right? Yeah, absolutely. Okay, but now let's look at a fun slide, Tom. So this slide is the trend of these armies.
Yep.
Okay. Their 4+ wins trend since basically the beginning of October. Okay. So October, November, up till nowish, basically, right? Into the first week of December. Okay. So look at Sons. These are in order, by the way. The top line, the brown line, okay, that's Sons of Behemoth. It hit this peak, and then it started going down. Right?
Wow.
Now, look at the 2 trend line. I'm going to jump you to near the bottom. to the green and the yellow,
I see them.
which are Orcs and Stormcast.
Huh. I wonder where they got those books.
Look at how those two overlap, right? These
Right, and notice that is the inflection point for Suns as well.
That's what I'm saying, yes. So two high DPS, pretty darn destructive armies come into the meta, right? Like Oryx being more destructive than Stormcast, but certainly, you know, Fulminators and Raptors and stuff like that can... they do the work, right? They're a damaging army. These two ultra high DPS, you know, delivery mechanisms enter the meta, and then it just clicks right there. Sun starts falling, these two start rising, and they're just cannibalizing the Suns. Right.
Those victories are but again, it's moving most of them towards the middle.
Sure.
It's interesting that Seraphon also pivoted upwards.
Yes.
But that's probably because it's more of a mobility range army.
No, I'll tell you exactly why that is.
Do you think it's just the multi-damage?
It's also the Oryx and the Stormcast. But all of whom both of those armies rely on multi-damage.
Yeah.
And
so Coalesced.
Thunder Lizard suddenly was like a way better bet. Right? When Ironjaw's overnight becomes 10% of the meta.
Yeah.
Right? And Stormcast, who were always a very popular army, also clock in at 10% of the meta. Like, when a fifth of the meta all of a sudden shifts to an army that you, like, neuter their ability to actually beat you, just you have the answer, the ace in the hole.
By default.
Yeah. Right? I love this chart because I just love how clear those 4 lines tell a story. Right? Like, Suns, we're doing great, guys. This is awesome. The trend line up is since they got their battalion, by the way. Their core battalions that let them, you know, be even better. And then all of a sudden, in come the high DPS / and then in Thunder Lizard's rising to meet and going hard coalesce Thunder Lizard to answer the Stormcast and Orc problem, they then also start cannibalizing the Gargants.
Right.
Because side benefit, it's way stronger against them too.
Right. So so much of the meta you're strong against. Yeah.
Yep. So the light blue line here, that's like, it's kind of hard to see, but this one right here, this is Lumineth.
Yep.
And I love how unchanged this is. Like, yes, it moved a little. It's on this like slowish trend up, but it's just it's Lumineth. We're just kicking along, boys.
They're just like, none of your bullshittery changes what we're doing.
Right. Look, we got these Sentinels, we got these Foxes, we got this Teclis.
Yep.
I don't know what you're here for, but you know, this is what we're doing, guys. So you just keep doing you. We're just gonna go ahead and shoot, do some 5+ mortals at things we can't see. Call it a day. Move block you with cheating units. It's fine.
It'll be fine.
Yep.
It's all fine.
It's all fine. Some other interesting ones here. Soulblight. Look where it started, and this is it's on this very unfortunate downward slope. Now again, it's not I don't want to overstate it. It's not huge, right? In the end, this is like 1% or 2 down. Okay.
Right.
Like 2% down, I think. But you know, they are like, as these other things are entering the meta, they don't have a hard inflection point, but it's just it's kind of this steady decrease, right?
Yeah.
And then here's your Daughters, by the way. Daughters tell a really interesting, strange story. Daughters were on this upward trajectory right along with Suns.
Yep.
Okay? And then when these armies hit, whammo blammo, they fall at a harder velocity down than even the Suns do.
Yeah.
Now, why do you think that is, Tom? What do you think happened
there? They're not resilient. All of the, like, and this is what hit with me when I played Doc at NashCon, is if I could get into them, like, other than Marathi, everything just exploded. And so I ended up shooting, like, a bunch of snakes off and then I just like turned towards the 2 blocks of 20 witch elves and just shot all the witch elves off. And so when you look at things, like 5 brutes buffed getting into 20 witch elves is a unit of dead witch elves.
Yeah, sure. Who's also making them count for like nothing on objectives.
Right. And so if any of that can get into a unit of snakes, the snakes are dead.
Yeah. I think it's just both of these armies have some pretty darn good answers to daughters, like because of what they can do. Like raptors can match their shooting.
Yep.
Things like annihilators can drop at 7, be immune to the bow snake shooting, easily land the charge. I don't know if you've seen, Tom, what like Grand Hammer annihilators are capable of, but it's a lot. There was a really
you still sold on those shields.
I love the shield guys. I really do. As 3 units, as a pack of 3, yes.
Yeah.
It depends. It's completely different units, right? As a pack of 3, shield all the way. As a pack of 6, because the hammer boys can reach over each other.
Yeah.
Like I watched a fun Twitch game with Haywo where he was playing against Archeon and a bunch of Varangard, and he dropped the Hammer Bros. Like he gave away first turn, then dropped the Hammer Bros. They went and deleted 3 Varangard, but like overkilled him by almost 20 damage, and then piled into Archeon and killed him dead. Just flattened him, and that was the game right there. Like, because he's like bottom of 1, top of 2, Archeon and the Varangard were dead. Game over. It was a brutal game. Those dudes they're hammers, like in the truest sense of the word. So there you go.
Good to know.
Yeah, fear the hammer bros. They're coming for you. Yeah, so the only other interesting one is Disciples, which kind of bounces around, and right. I'm not really sure why. Like, it goes on an upward trend here, but then back down. I'm not sure what's going on there.
I suspect that has to do with... when was that? October?
Well, they start to go up when Stormcast and Oryx come out, but then they start to slowly trend back down in the middle of, toward the end of November.
I mean, the Orc books and all that dropped earlier than even this chart has it.
Sure. Well, you hit this inflection point of when people get things on the table, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Keep in mind, it's like,
there's lead time.
Yeah. Somebody didn't magically have all that stuff painted right away, right? Like some people did, but to get enough of it in the meta representation takes time.
No, that's fair. Yeah, no, it's just interesting. I think that the Tzeentch stuff is probably... it's also a function of the nerf to Archeon, because a lot of the Tzeentch builds were relying heavily on him.
Sure. That might be where this downward trend is coming from.
Yep.
Right. So, I thought this was a really fascinating chart. Thank you, AoS Shorts Dan. He's in the chat right now. Dan, you're a superstar. You're a hero. Okay. Let's look at some more cool stuff, Tom. Here we go. More stats. Back to Honest Wargamer Rob. Matches by battle plan. Oh, Dan made a great point. Don't forget, many events ban books until the FAQ drops.
Oh, yeah, that's a good call.
Thank you, Dan. That's an excellent point. Anyways, scenarios played. First Blood, up at the top. Not surprising. It's the least controversial strategy. Battle plan, right? It's
super straightforward.
Super straightforward. It's good. Nothing wrong with it. It should be in every tournament. It should be game 1 in basically every tournament. Like, it's a good warm-up, right? Feral Foray, which I also think is a super strong scenario. I love Feral Foray. Then Power Struggle, Tectonic Interference, Survival of the Fittest, the Vice.
Yep.
The only one that surprised me was more people didn't have Savage Gains in here, but I think that's because they ruined Savage Gains. And also because Savage Gains, Giants break Savage Gains, and I don't think people really like it right now for that reason.
Sure. I would agree with that. I'm glad Power Numbers is down there.
Yeah, the 4 at the bottom should pretty much all be there. Like, I think Apex Predators, Power in Numbers, and Tooth and Nail, and Marking Territory are basically just battle plan poison. Yeah. They're all terrible for different reasons. So, like, yes, none of those should be played. They're all bad. Like, the middle set there is, like, okay.
Yeah.
But the bottom 4 are just, they're Garbo scenarios.
Yep.
Where people just suddenly lose and don't know why. Or don't even know they've lost.
Right.
Like, that's something Apex, Power in Numbers, and Marking Territory all have in common, is that you might just be losing and not even be aware of it. And you just...
Right. You think you're winning.
You think you're winning, the turn changes, and somebody's like, I do this and this and this, you lost. Oh.
Yep.
Okay. Cool. Neat. Right. It's just, they're horrible scenarios.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Win rate by tier. So here's a cool thing that Rob did. Okay?
Yep.
One of the things that Rob did was he broke up the overall armies into 3 tiers. Top tier, mid tier, bottom tier. Okay?
Sure.
And that's effectively how we talked about it. So it was like the Sinister Six are the top tier. The mid tier is everybody rolling between like those numbers, right? The 40, the sort of 45 to 55. We didn't talk about all the bottom tier, like Blades of Corn and those other people who are 40, 41, and so on and so forth, because I couldn't do the whole. We didn't do the whole lot of them. We only did the worst of the worst. There's a lot more people down at the bottom. The bottom tier is all those, right? Everybody below 45%. Yep. And so it's a question of who's winning against that, right?
Sure.
So when you look at your top tier win rate, it's a question of Suns going into only the Sinister Six, or Tzeentch going into only the Sinister Six, or so on and so forth. Okay?
Yep.
And Rerolling ones, Jack said, I played against a Sons of Batman army where the opponent burned 5 of the 6 objectives on top of 2. Whatever mission that was, can take a walk. It's not the exact words he used, but that, Jack, was Power in Numbers, because that is the one that allows you to burn all of the objectives. Feral Foray does not. It only allows you to burn 1 objective, which is better.
Right. Right.
You don't just suddenly lose. Like that situation right there. Okay. So, of course, notably, into the top tier, this leads to the cannibalization idea, right?
Yep.
In the top tier, by the way, the Bone Split is a great example. Like, Bone Split is showing up so high is a great example of a data irregularity, Tom, what you're talking about when you start segmenting this. Because there actually is when you cut it like this, there's a very low number of games where the Bone Splitters have played the top tier. Yep. And so because they accidentally squeaked out a slightly higher than average number of wins, right?
Yeah,
like the underlying data there is not as robust as we would want it. So there is still, when you start cutting like this, you get oddities in the data.
Yep.
But a lot of these have, especially like amongst the top highly played armies, and that's the problem. Like Bone Splitters has a very low meta representation, so it's tough, right? But it leads to them cannibalizing each other, because only 3 of these into the top tier actually go over 50%. Sons, Disciples, and Seraphon.
Yep.
Right? Everybody else is having a lower win rate against the top tier.
Yep.
Right? So that's what tells me that, like, what's keeping us under, like, at 60% and under right now, what's keeping us in the fat middle is the top cannibalizing each other and killing everything, right? The fact that there's such a thick bulkhead, right, of stuff up here. There's a 31% gap in between the bottom being Beast of Chaos at 21%. I mean, Beast just struggles against the top for obvious reasons, right? And the top, which is Sons, Disciples, and Seraphon, all at 52. When you look at mid-tier, okay, you've got almost the same spread, 32%, but it moves up, right? Because against that, so when we're talking in the mid-tier, look who the new sudden king is against the mid-tier, Tom. The Luft, right? The Legion of the First Prince, whose control strat is so strong against those mid-tier armies. Once they're not being bothered by their other top-tier competitors who have answers for their shenanigans,
right,
they just suddenly start beating the heck out of people. By the way, this is going to get worse in a second. Okay.
Yep.
And then obviously sons, Lumineth, daughters, disciples, Seraphon. If you look at the mid-tier, right, look who the 6 are that are in the mid-tier.
Yep, it's the Sinister 6.
Yep. And they're all hitting win rates of 55% or higher. Right.
Yep.
So they're just pushing a lot of headway here. Right. Yeah, so I thought this was a really interesting breakdown. Anything else stand out to you on this one?
No, it's interesting to me that like daughters actually struggles against the other top tier armies.
Yep.
And actually has as good of a win rate as KO.
Yep.
Which I thought was just so fascinating. But KO in general performs almost as well against the top tier armies as the mid tier armies.
Yep. Yeah, which, by the way, actually doesn't surprise me too much. Because and I think it
does one thing.
It does one thing, but it does it pretty well, and it's actually a pretty decent army to face a lot of what's in the top tier. Like, a lot of what Loft wants to do, KO's like, I don't care.
You're going to stop charging in movement? Cool story.
Right, like, I teleport and shoot. I don't know what you thought this was, but this is a different game. Bang, bang. Shot me down, right?
Right.
Suns, they can lift up a giant if they need to. Right? They can put enough heat into it. Lumineth, yeah, they're perfectly happy to shoot elves. Right? They just can't get shot down themselves. But yes, if they get, like, in the right build, they can shoot up elves. Daughters, you just told the story, right? They can exploit the fragility of daughters and hit the units they need to hit. Disciples, they have a better kill box than disciples do.
Yep, because they have a moving kill box.
Correct.
Right.
Yep. They don't have a castle kill box. They have a moving kill box that has some longer range too, I would add. Not a tremendous amount. But enough. Seraphon is the only one where I think they can have a tough time, because the new coalesced Thunder Lizard build is actually quite damaging to a lot of KO stuff, because there is quite a bit of multi-damage shooting in there.
I'm aware.
Yeah. They're better matched into Starborn, where it's like we can play the teleport, move, and shoot game too, and then it just
becomes a one drop war.
It's just this dance off, right? For who's the one drop, who gets the roll, who's shooting who's valuable stuff first, yada yada yada, right?
Yep.
I think they have a much harder time there.
Yep.
Okay. I would point out just a couple other things I want to leave people with here. Ironjawz in the top tier has a 39% win rate right now. Okay? Because it is an all melee army, and a lot of the Sinister Six exploits melee armies and shooting and stuff, right?
Yep.
They have good answers for somebody who wants to show up and have a punch up. Okay? Against the mid tier, they jump to 53%. They're the next one right below the Sinister Six.
They're just punching nerds. Like, right. They get to that middle tier.
Right. It's like, oh, hey, boys, this is where we want to be. Yes, exactly. And so they jump, right? Like, look at that jump. Jump 14% in efficacy when they go into the mid-tier armies. Your KO... They
literally walk up to the table. IJ does, and they're like, oh, that's unfortunate.
Right.
Like, depending on the opponent. Or, oh, this is going to be a good game.
Mm-hmm.
Where KO's like, oh, I'm just going to shoot some stuff.
Exactly. Whereas your KO...
Comes out.
Your KO and their typical argle-bargle of shooting is like, it only gains 2%. That's it. Right. That's all you gained by going into the mid-tier. It's like, they don't gain that much.
Right.
So I just thought that kind of distinction was interesting. There are some really fascinating tales of who jumps where here, right? Igneth, by the way, are another big mover. 41% against the top tier, 53%, again, tied with Ironjawz into the mid-tier, right? They're ready to exploit the middle tier.
Yeah, Sylvaneth is the one that grabs my attention. 27% in the top tier, 48 in the middle.
Yeah, 21% jump. Yes.
double their win chance.
Yep.
By going into the middle tier armies.
Yep. Yeah, it's crazy, right? Tyler would be very happy about that change, but that right there shows you that these top, like the Sullen 6 are really getting their teeth kicked in by the
top tier.
By the top tier, right?
Yeah.
Abaddon said, "What is the reason for SCE being so low compared to their 4+ wins?" There's a lot of SCE being played, and when you rank it by just percentage of win rate, it gets very different. They also had a very low. This is also when you the trick being is that 4+ wins is just running a count up, right? Whereas this is taking the overall average percentage. And keep in mind, several months of this data is them with their old rules, not their new rules, so they're getting dragged down by that, right?
Yep.
They've had a lot more 4+s since then. So yes, Sylvaneth jumping up 21%. Pretty good. All right, Tom, you ready for the real fun one?
Yeah.
Oh, some of these, don't worry, Autumn, we're going to get into some big skews, I promise. Like, there is, I think that 21% is a pretty big jump, but that's a crazy swing, but low tier. Let's talk about the swing. You ready? You ready, Tom, for the bottom tier win rate?
Oh, yeah.
Into the bottom tier. The new Kings of the Ring. That's right. They're not even in the Sinister 6, but they're up top, baby! From the top rope. You can't stop them. They're coming with sharks. They're coming with eels. That's right. The Ideneth Deepkin at a 76% win rate against the low tier, the bottom tier. This is everybody who on that previous chart who was under 45%.
So IDK rolls up and they're like, "Oh, it's been a rough tournament, but I got Night Hunt now."
Yes. Come here, nerds. Absolutely. Let's just chart that again, everybody. Here we go. So let's just walk through that. Let's follow the Ideneth example.
Clearly, low tier can't swim.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ideneth, 41% into the top tier.
Yeah.
53% into the mid tier, 12% jump.
Yep.
76% into the low tier, into the bottom. 23% on top. 35% total run from against the high to low.
Insanity.
That's one of the craziest stories.
Insanity.
Yep.
Yeah, IDK's like, step aside, sons.
Literally. Yes.
Because it's interesting, like, Suns actually doesn't jump as much.
No.
I mean, in a sense, they play a fairer game. But when IDK rolls into that bottom tier, they're just like, we got all the tools.
Yes. Final Flash said you all float down here. Yes, indeed. Once they get in the sewers, baby, it's time to tussle. You know, like you've got these abusers. The Legion of the First Prince, another one, 72% madness. Like they're just brutalizing these poor armies that can't handle the control.
Doc.
Right. Doc at 72%.
LRL.
Yep.
It's just all that shooting, like all that mortal wound shooting. They're just like line them up, and they can just pull apart the lower tier armies.
Yep.
And because you have a bunch of armies that were reinforcement point dependent, they were bodies dependent, and now they're literally just like MSU bodies. What ends up happening is they go into those units, into the LRL Sentinels, into the Snake Archers, and just get shot before they can even attack.
Yep. But we told the insane story. Let's tell a sad story here, Tom. You ready? We're gonna go back real quick. Beasts of Chaos are low on the totem pole.
Yeah.
Okay. At a 21% against the top tier.
Yeah.
Now they shoot up to 41% against the mid tier.
Yeah.
When they play other low tier armies, they fall back to 30%. They go down.
I'm so sad.
11 points.
They're just like,
because amongst the losers, the other losers are better at killing them than they are.
It's the worst. Beastman players, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you've had to suffer the humiliation of not only having your teeth kicked in by LRL, but also bone splitters.
By like Skaven and Gloop Spite, yeah. 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 So I thought that was a fascinating journey for the poor beasts of chaos.
Aww.
Like they had hope. Dashed against the rocks.
They're like, we're up to 40% win chance.
Yeah.
Get back down to your 30.
You know, a lot of other ones are just a story of continued uprising. Like Ironjaws are down further in this list.
Yep.
A lot of people jump over top of them, but they still went up 8%.
Right.
Right. So, Nighthaunt, baby. Your Nighthaunt. 60% win rate against the lower tier. Those ghosts are ready to abuse the bottom tier.
It's the mobility.
They're so spoopy.
The key is mobility there. They're just like, we have tools that you don't to be on the objectives that you're not.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like, I agree. I think Nighthaunt is actually, when you look at their fundamentals, they're certainly one of the strongest of that lower tier, right? Against their fellow nerds, they're ready to just start swinging. I think, like, because the other armies down there don't really have, like, for example, the things that are going to stop their recursion mechanics.
Right. No, that's exactly right. And that's why I think that Nighthaunt has potential, is because at the end of the day, they're strong in fundamentals. Like, they're missing a couple key pieces like anvil or like hammers. They're strong in fundamentals. The key, though, is that like, with the right tricks, you can outplay players on the top end.
Yep.
Like, you don't need to outpower them, you just have to outplay them.
But yes. Idneth Deepkin, typical Argle Bargle right there, just coming in with all the abusive mechanics that really hurt the low tier people. Okay. That's a neat point I hadn't thought about. Curran said also the lower tier army struggle to kill Nighthaunt, like to pass it, because Nighthaunt does have some of that as well.
Yep.
And a lot of the lower tier armies also have awful bravery.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point, and that's very true. A lot of those lower tier armies have some pretty poor bravery.
And Olander coming in swinging on with her mortal wound spam.
Mm-hmm. Whereas a lot of those upper tier armies are like much higher bravery people.
True.
Okay. So I thought this one was super fun. Yeah, win rate by tier is a good time. I love the story the journey we go on with some of these armies, right?
Oh.
One more just quick story to tell here as we look at it is Flesh Eater Courts. Yeah. Flesh Eater Courts are very poor into the top tier at like 38%. They shoot up to kind of where we would expect, 48% around the mid tier, but into the low tier, they only gain 2 more points.
But again, being at 50 is not terrible.
It's not. It just feels like I would have expected them to jump more. It tells you that the army has a lot of fundamental problems right now, right? That like their problem of command abilities that don't stack with each other anymore, and just there are a lot of fundamental challenges with that army, right?
Yep.
So there you go. And I think that tells that story really well. When you look at an army like that used to be a king of the ring, right?
Yep.
And you see that even into the bottom tier, they still can't gain that much, right? It tells you a lot about their overall efficacy, right? They've just got big challenges, big headwinds.
Yep.
Okay. All right, meta representation. We've been dancing around this one for a little while. Let's talk about some meta representation. So this is your overall percentage in the meta. Like, how much does this army show up, right? Sons of Badmot, 7.3, Soulblight, 7.1, Seraphon, 6.8, Stormcast, 6.6, Lumineth, 6.2, Ironjaws, 5.9. I would love a trend line on these. I don't have one, but stats team, if you happen to watch this, if we can get a trend line report of this in your Tableau visualizations. I assume you're using Tableau for this. I don't know that for sure, but if you are, I would really love a trend line report. I spend all my day... not all my day. I spend parts of my day doing requirements for analytics and reports. Now I get to spend my Warhammer evenings doing that too. Anything in this, and then you've got the people down at the bottom. I just love how no one plays Heat Knights anymore. That army used to have quite a significant meta representation. It was never up at the top, but it had a good representation, even at its height. But now it's just get out of here.
No longer.
Yeah. Beasts, Big Wa, Bone Splitters. I mean, Big Wa and Bone Splitters are honestly barely armies anymore. I don't mean that with any insult. That's what the game seems to be telling me. That's no judgment. And so, anything on here grab your attention? Yes, exactly. Bone Splitters at 0.6 explains the funky top tier stat. Correct. That's what I'm saying. Their representation's so low it skews some of the data.
The thing that grabs me initially is Blades, Nighthaunt, and Cruel Boys, all at sub 2.5%, given that they're all starter armies for the last 3 editions.
Yeah, the Cruel Boys could be a production issue, right? Like, keep in mind, we're talking about, this is on all results since the launch of 3.0, and a lot of the Cruel Boys army wasn't even available for many months of 3.0.
I understand
and people had to paint those because those didn't exist beforehand, right?
But let me point out that Nighthaunt and Blades were the first and second edition, and they're still really low, even though those models are profuse. Like,
Sure.
if you want armies that, like, where the models are easy to get a hold of, right? Like, easy starter armies. Both Nighthaunt and Blades would be in that category, and yet both of them are terrible.
Yep. I would point out your Luft, your Legion of the First Prince, clocking in at that 2% number. That shows just how far above its weight it's punching.
Right. Well, it's like Fire Slayers. Fire Slayers used to, like, punch really heavy, and it's always been at that 2% mark, that 1.9 to 2%.
It's never been an attractive aesthetic that people bought into. I mean, in every one of our surveys we did, it was consistently either the bottom or second from the bottom on armies played.
Yep, like on aesthetics and all that. Yep.
Right. Either people rating it on the aesthetics, actual number of people playing it, everywhere.
Right? Yeah, I mean, I feel truly singular. I mean, I know I'm not. I know Kenny's out there playing Fire Slayers or has Fire Slayer armies.
Sure.
There's not a lot of.
I mean, he hasn't been playing his Fire Slayers, right? You know, recently.
I know. Right.
He went over to play Ogres because he decided he wanted to have fun.
Well, sure. But that's the point, right? Is that there's just not a lot of people that have those armies.
Yep. Yeah. You know what I love about this? The Maw Tribe's representation. 4.9, clocking in basically at 5%. Let's just call it an even 5. Okay?
Yep.
Maw Tribes, players, you're all heroes. Every one of you. Your army, it's never been the best. It's also never been the worst. And whether it's monster trucks or fat boys you're rolling, I don't care. These people who play ogres, they showed up to play ogres. That's why they're here. They love ogres. They want to play ogres. They're sticking with ogres. Right?
Yep.
They're sticking with the fort. They're there. So, like, I love it. I think it's great. How much of the 5% is the Haywo effect? I hope Haywo is single-handedly bolstering that by convincing people to keep playing it. I don't think Haywo has been to a lot of tournaments recently, so it's not him. But your heroes, one and all, every one of you ogre players. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, let me just say, as somebody pointed out, somebody said they're surprised OCR is so high at 3.7. Whoa! Let's remember that a year ago they were 10%.
Right. Yep. That's true. Yep. So they're way down.
A year ago, OCR was 10% of the meta.
Yep. During the height of Petrifex Elite nonsense.
Yep. Now, what I will say is fascinating to me is that, like, we used to have multiples at, like, that 9, 10, 11%.
Sure.
And now, the highest is 7.3.
Sure.
That's surprising to me. We have a lot more down in the 2.5% or lower. That's what it feels like, at least.
And when I look at this, like, Soulblight, their meta representation, their meta representation is higher than their win rate would suggest.
Yeah.
Does that make sense what I'm saying? It's
Yep.
clearly... one of the interesting things that this can define for me is when an aesthetic is strong enough to
carry the army.
to carry the army. And to me, that's
Yep.
Soulblight, right?
Yeah.
Not that it's a
That's
losing
certainly
army,
true.
by the way. It's got an
It does
almost
fine.
perfect win rate where we would want it, right? It's
Yeah,
like
it does fine. Yeah.
it does fine. It's right in the middle of the. It's right in the middle of the middle. It's the middle of the fat middle.
But it's popular, and but the key is that we are in the heart of like the Soulblight boom, because they drop this spring, give them 6 months to paint. We're after that 6-month hump, so the bulk of your armies after release are all out and on the table. You know, the same can't be said of like Stormcast.
Mm-hmm.
You know, or particularly Cruel Boys.
Right.
Cruel Boys are certainly like an example of that.
Sure. It's amazing to me. I will be honest with you, Tom. I am amazed that Lumineth have held up as long as they have. Is that just power? Is that just people meta chasing, or do people really love high elves, or some of both?
No, that's meta chasing.
Okay.
Like, let's not. I don't think the Lumineth aesthetic. I mean, this is my read. I don't think that it's that popular. I think that is literally the power play. Right
Okay.
there.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, and then there's a lot of stuff in the middle. You know, it's a big middle bunch that doesn't surprise me too much. Gits, they may be at the bottom of every win rate list, but boy oh boy are 2.5% of the people more than Nighthaunt, more than Blades, more than Fire Slayers, them Gits players, just like the Ogre players, Destruction Bros. Know how to roll. Like, I think Suns is the most popular army. One, because it only takes 4 figs or 6 figs, depending on how you build it, to play it. Okay.
Right. No, that's exactly right.
2, because Destruction Bros for life. Like, people who roll Destruction love Destruction and want to play their Destruction armies.
They're Timmies.
Yes, they're like it attracts Timmies. I'm a Destruction player. I've come to learn this about myself. Hence the Ogre Maw tribes and Gits representation.
And giant, you're like, oh my gosh, yes. You have everything but Gits.
I have everything but Gits. Yeah, correct.
And I mean, come on. At some point, you're going to do a squig army.
It'll probably... what is the date of the Honest Wargamer data? This was as of his last stat show, so this would have been last Monday.
Or last Monday. Oh,
Yeah, last Monday. Whatever that was. Like, so 9 days ago or something. I think he posted this up on Tuesday. It hit the blog. So, okay. So it's about a week old. But yeah, like, I think that's what it's... So my point is, yes, Suns are easy to collect. Yes, they're strong, but also Destruction Bros. It's everything. My point is, it's the nexus of everything coming together, right?
Yep.
So I like if we end up getting a nerf to Suns in some way, or a rewrite,
like, do you
that
think
percentage will drop, but it won't fall through the floor.
Do you think Amulet Destiny would do that?
Sure, I pick something. I don't care. Like, make the army tangibly weaker in one of 100 ways. You will see a drop, of course, because that's what happens, right? Some amount of all high percentage meta armies are meta chasing, right? Some percentage. But to me, you're still going to see that Suns showing up at a large percentage for the foreseeable future. Okay. The Kraken said people also 3D print all the models. Also true. You don't even have to buy the actual giants. You can just 3D print them, or just buy any of the 100 different other big giant models, which are around and quite easy to utilize as well, quite cheaply. Okay. Positive win rate potential. This is a cool thing. This is PWP, I don't know. Positive win potential. This is what Honest Wargamer came up with, and I like this. I really like this take on it. So your positive win rate potential is your
is that army's combined win percentage where it went at least 3 wins. So where it went 3-2, 4-1, or 5-1. Okay? So its representation from the list from all tourneys where that list where a Sons of Bahamut list, like of all Sons of Bahamut lists that were entered in tourneys, to put this in perspective like this, 68% of them got at least 3 wins or more. Okay? Now, David Aaron says the stat that Rob really doesn't understand. I love you, Rob. Rob will often say, so this is your chance of going 3 wins or more at an event. No. No. That is not what this means at all. That's not how stats work. You can't translate back to the individual like that. Stats are an aggregate. They don't go back to the individual. Your chance of going 3, 4, 5 wins at a tournament is based on a myriad number of factors. Certainly not this. But this is an absolutely fascinating stat. And, Frui just asked a great question, which is, what is an ideal practical range for every army to sit between 40 to 60, 45 to 55? And my honest answer is, I'm not sure. I'd have to think about that. I don't know. When I think about the win rate, it's easy because that's a sort of well-established science. When you look at just the overall win rate, there's lots of competitive games that have sort of tested and used the 45 to 55% metric for a long time. And so that one's sort of well-established in the industry. This is a new, interesting stat, and I don't know what the ideal range would be. I have to think about that. That's a really great question. Ryan said Rob is just giving a figure speech. I know he is, but the way he says it, I also don't want somebody new who doesn't know understand data science to misinterpret his figure of speech. Okay.
Yep.
And I'm just ribbing him anyways. I'm deeply grateful to Rob and the stats team for putting this all together. Rob's going to be on the show in a couple weeks, and we're going to talk a little stats, but we're also going to talk rule design. I am super excited to have Rob on and talk about rule design. By the by, a quick shout out, everybody, on Rob. This is late in the show. We're going to interrupting our scheduled broadcast to say 2 things. 1, hey, hit like if you haven't already. Don't forget to hit that like button. Do that. We appreciate it. It helps other people find the show. So slam that button. Subscribe if you haven't already. 2, Tom, did you know Rob is being interviewed by the BBC about Warhammer tomorrow?
No, I don't. That's amazing.
That should have been in the news section. I'm sleeping on that. Yes. Honest Wargamer Rob is going to get interviewed. I am excited. I think he's going to be a great ambassador for the hobby. Honestly, I think he'll give a great interview. It literally is what he did professionally for a long time, and he's great at speaking about this stuff. I look forward to what he has to say. So check it out. Check out BBC News. I'm going to look up his article tomorrow. Okay. So, anyways, back to this. Suns 68%, Tom. 68% of an army with a 7.3% representation in the meta, right? They show up a lot. Okay, this is a commonly played army. And 68% of them are achieving 3 or more wins. 3, 4, 5
impressive.
wins. It's crazy.
Impressive. Yeah.
That's too much, right? Let's start talking about how we get to a range. That's too high. Right? I mean, that's clearly too high. It has to be. That means 7 out of 10 armies. 7 out of 10 Suns armies players in a tournament.
7 out of 10 Suns players in a tournament are getting 3 or more wins. That's pretty strong.
That's too much. That's clearly too much.
You should be probably around between 5 and 6 of the 10.
Well, let's think about this, right? So, I need to how many people go 3, 2, or more in a tournament? What's the field look like, right? Because it spreads unevenly, and groups toward the middle, right? because the nature of the Swiss system.
Like I think the 3 and 2 and 2 and 3 is that those two ratios are going to take up like 60%, I think, of your wins, of your armies.
First of all, I want to meet the Suns players who end up 2-1 or 2-3. Sorry, or 1-4.
If for some reason I want to say that it's like 60, 25, 60, and then 35% split. I think the next two maybe, and then 5% split the last.
Yeah,
two.
To think about how people should arrange, I need to think about how the Swiss pairings over 5 rounds naturally will tend to push people. Yeah. Like, and that would give you your answer, right? That's
like
the,
my
that's
gut.
The
like I would need to see the math of it, but like my gut is something like 60 for the middle two, 35. So when I say 60, 30 and 30 for 2 and 3 and 3 and 2,
mm-hmm.
and then approximately like 17% on the front and back of the 4 and 1s, or the 1 and 4s. And then I think 2.5% on the 5 and O's and the 0 and 5s. I think it's something like that.
Sure.
I mean, I like that's me like eyeballing it, but I think that's the math should be a bell curve around that area.
That's what I'm thinking. Yes.
Yes.
That makes sense. By the way, breaking news! I just got an updated trend line of meta percentage since September, basically the beginning of September to now. And you can see the inflection point where the Auric War Clans book comes out. This is on my phone. You can't really see it, but you see this one green line shooting to the moon? That's Iron Jaws.
Yeah. That's a thing. That's and when did Tyler get his army? Like right
around the same time, yeah, a little bit before, yeah.
Maybe it's just Tyler single-handedly doing it.
There you go.
Yeah. That's what your paint does for people.
I think it's funny the way this list is distributed, right?
Sure.
Because this list is definitely much wider. And again, I think it should be, but I don't, like, it should probably be wider than the traditional win rate percentage. But I don't know how much wider. Certainly not this wide, is my feeling. That's just a feeling, right?
Yeah.
And
I mean, ideally, I think you'd want to be in the 40 to 60%.
That feels like probably right. Like, that feels like the fat middle is going to rear its head again. Right?
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, what does getting 2 wins amount to? It's a 40% win rate, right? And getting 3 wins is a 60% win rate, right? That's the dividing line. It's 40, pretty straightforward math.
Right.
So my thought is you'd want to see people grouping around that.
Yep.
And there is a lot that fall out of here, out the bottom of this. Like a lot.
It's true.
City, Sylvaneth, Stormcast, which is probably not true anymore, but it was over average.
Well, I was going to say, the one that surprises me here is cities.
Sure.
How is cities so low?
Let's look at their meta representation again. So cities meta representation, where are they here? 4.3%. So quite a high meta representation. But they're probably a pretty finicky army to play right now.
So you think that there's just a bunch of bad, like there's a bunch of good.
I think it's an easy army to go 2-3 with.
Yeah, that's fair.
in the current meta.
Interestingly, when you jump back even farther to positive, not positive, that's down, up to the win rate tier by tier, the bottom even it's like cities are still only 43% against the lowest tier armies.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, if you're not picking up against the low tier, you're not like, that's how you're getting that easy 3-2, right? If you're
right.
Kicking puppies, right?
Right. When you're dropping to bottom tables and still winning, that like that's what bumps you to that 3-2.
Right.
Yeah.
But there's just so much that falls out the bottom. And I think when you look at the top, it is interesting because it's hard to track, like with positive win rate potential. You really do have to think about it in terms of meta representation as well and things like that, because it's interesting how those two can tie together, what the army favors. Like with Legion of the First Prince, they have this in 67%, which is effectively tied with Suns, right? Like, let's again assume all these have a plus or minus at least a couple percentage points is our level of confidence, right? Like any survey like this, we would assume this is, like at this number of results, we're going to assume confidence, right? Plus or minus 3%, something like that, right? It's probably where the truth is. And so those two numbers are effectively equal, right? And with Legion, you have such a lower meta percentage, but the people who are playing them almost by nature have to be experts, right? Like it is an army that speaks to a certain type of player.
Yes. Yeah, the players are self-selecting up there. Yeah.
Right. And it also, as we saw, does perform very strongly into the low tier. Like it is a hardcore puppy kicker.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. Generating bad experiences. Yes.
Sure. Absolutely. Like into the low tier and mid tier, it's just brutal. It just brutalizes them. Right? And, there's obviously a pretty strong correlation between positive win rate potential and how you play into the mid and low tier.
Yep.
Because generally 2 to 3 of your games are going to be into mid and low tier. Just because that's how Swiss works, right? You're just randomly paired. Right? It's not always the case. Sometimes you can get a bad draw. Sometimes you might end up being like, Suns, Seraphon, Doc. It's just like, oh, great. Like that can happen. But that's not the sort of the modal is that you would be spread because all these armies are present.
Right.
So 2 to 3 of your games are going to be against mid or low tier. And if you're picking up those wins easily, you're just running up the clock.
Right.
Okay. All right. Anything else jump out to you on positive win rate potential? It's a very cool stat. It's really interesting. It's something I want to think a lot more about. I think it's interesting because it shows just how bad some of these armies are performing in a very real way, right? Because when you look at overall win rate, like Skaven and Gloomspite, they're getting credit effectively for the 1 or 2 wins they pick up at every tournament, even though that's still a bad tournament experience. Right? It's a losing record, as it were.
Yep.
Whereas here, you really see you're not getting credit for those 1 or 2 wins, since this is a first past the post calculation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so the armies that are underperforming, that are at the bottom, really see it. Because all of a sudden, the only wins they have that counts are when they get at least the 3-2.
Yeah.
When at least they put a winning record on the board.
Yeah.
And, like, gets at 17%. Holy Moses. Right? Like, that means, again, we'll be generous, 2 in 10 of the Gits players that show up at a tournament are gonna go at least 3-2.
If there are 10 Gits players.
There aren't, but still, I'm just, saying, right?
Yeah.
That's a scary stat. That is woof.
Yeah. You better like your army.
Yeah, you ain't wrong. Okay, I mean, hey, Gits players are ride or die, so it doesn't surprise me.
I mean, I got a bunch of basketballs over there.
Sure. All right. Percent of finishes. Okay. So this kind of gets into, this is just exploring positive win rate at a deeper level, right? Because now we're going to get into the 5-win, 4-win, 3-win. And these will be, like, these are percentages, whereas before when we looked at 4 plus, it grouped 4 and 5 together, and so on and so forth. They're slightly different data sets. But this is, I think, a different way to slice and dice the data that's really interesting. So 5-win finish rates means the percentage of armies that have been up at the tournament, that have appeared at the tournament, right, that got 5 wins. So you had to win all 5 rounds. You went 5-0 effectively, right? And any 6 round tournaments were filtered out of this for this. Okay. Look at that again. The Bone Splitters number is not correct. That's that super low data set being skewed by one player because we've segmented the data too far. They're super low meta representation because this is a percentage of all of the times they've shown up, right?
Oof. Poor KO.
1%. That's not you, by the way, Tom. Just so you know. I know it's not you. Because I don't believe the stats team put NashCon into this data set because they ruled it too different than a normal tournament because of the two-list format.
Yeah.
Well,
so there was only like 3 KO 5-0s anyways. I mean, like there's just not a lot.
Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, that 1%, like what in the like Maw tribes and like we've seen Sylvaneth down at the bottom. We've seen Nighthaunt down at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
But KO, OBR, Maw tribes.
I'm pretty sure those OBR are all Owen Jackson, by the way. Or at least, like, most of them are Owen Jackson. That is truly one player lifting that number.
Right. Wow.
The thing that's shocking to me about this one is the Disciples being so far outside the curve.
Yeah.
Racking up so many 5+ wins. Like, you look at this and it's a pretty steady progression, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9. And the 6 isn't real, right? Remember, the 6 is an incorrect skew from a bad data set, from a bad amount of underlying data.
Yep.
So that means it jumps from 5% with Legion to 9% with Disciples.
Yep.
Right? AoS Short said, Owen has 6 4-1 results this season with OBR. It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Well, he's definitely the one that's pushing it to 9% in that form.
The Owen Jackson. That is right. The man, the myth, the legend. Okay. All right. The 4-win finish rate. So this is obviously you went 4-1, right? Specifically 4-1.
Yep.
Okay. It is funny, by the way, that Caradron do jump up quite a bit. We see that, Tom? Right. Yep. My guess is there's often a thing that is going to answer Caradron pretty well. It's a very hard army to get 5-0 with, but a well-built, well-played KO list is, can be quite strong against a lot of them.
You're just rolling the dice. Like when you get to the 5-0 game, and what is that last matchup?
Right. Seraphon Disciples, Legion, Sons, Lumineth, Daughters. Guess what we've got there, Tom, in the 4+ win rate? Who is it? It's our old friends, the Sinister Six. Oliver said, does this include the pre-cog nerf? Yes, this goes back to the beginning of AoS 3. So this is, like, those Disciples numbers are factoring in the pre before the cogs nerf. Yes, correct. There's where you really see the Sinister Six being just, like, asserting their dominance. Right, because remember, every 4-1 of these is an 80%. Every 4-1 is an 80% win rate.
Yep.
Right. Does the Honest Wargamer 4-win finish rate include 4 wins and 1 draw? Yes, it does. Shorts, yes. It's, and I think part of the challenge here, Tom, is, as you know well, the difference between 4 and 5. Getting 4 and 5 wins is oftentimes a mix of a lot of different factors other than the army itself, right? That 5th win, when you're on the top tables, table 1, 2, 3, 4, playing for 5-0, right? Or something like that.
Yep. It's dice, it's scenario, it's matchup, it's player skill.
There's just a lot of ephemeral nature, a lot of luck. And you'll see that because you'll see the same players be in the top 10 every time, but they'll flop around on positions.
Right.
Like, they got first, then they got 7th, then they got 3rd, then they got 5th, then they got 1st again, right? They'll kind of bounce around. Because and the difference will be are they in the 4-1 bracket or the 5-0 bracket? Because there's a lot of luck to getting into the 5-0 bracket. Right place, right time, right list, right scenario, right dice, so on.
Yep.
Right? And there's so much ephemeral to going 5-0 at a tournament. It's really hard, and it's there's a lot of it that's out of your control. Whereas the 4+, I think, is much more informed by your overall skill.
Right.
Right.
I would agree with that.
Although Army obviously influences. I mean, as we can see here, the Army's playing a strong place, right? Because again, the Sinister Six is showing up here.
Yep.
And then at the interestingly, if you look at Suns, Suns, by the way, in the 5-0,
Yep.
still good, 5%, right? Not bad. Over here, 22 in the 4+, but up here is where they dominate, right? In the 3+ win rate. Sons and Daughters dominating the top of this list, along with Legions.
Yep.
Right. Interestingly, OCR Bone Reapers. Flesh Eater Courts. These are the two I did not expect to show up here.
That Flesh Eater is really interesting.
Yeah, especially since they have a pretty poor win rate overall, and don't. But remember, against the mid tier, remember how against the mid tier they were in the low tier they were clocking right around 50%.
Yep. This is what's pushing that.
That tells me that they're really good at going 3-2.
Yeah.
Right, because we go back to the 4-1, they're way down here, 4%. Right. Here, this massive jump up to 38. It is the Army of going 3-2.
Yeah, it is.
You've still got enough excuse me, gas in the tank that you can beat up some nerds. You can play pretty well into the mid and low tier, and then you hit any high tier army and you're dead in the water instantly. Right?
Yep.
And so to me, that's exactly what's happening there. Again, that's my inference. I don't know that for sure. No, we don't know any of this for sure. This is all our punditry,
Yep.
As to what's happening, trying to infer from the data and map these correlations. It's almost impossible to get causation out of the data. At best, we can say these things are correlating. Anything else grab you out of this, Tom, with the 3 finish or the 4 or 5?
No. It like all of it. All of it is fascinating.
Yeah, this is a great data set. It really is.
Right.
I think there's so much to look at here. So yeah, there you go. But that's it, folks. That brings us to the end. There we go. That's all the stats. Now,
so can I point something out real quick?
Mm-hmm.
So Michael Ruff said in a perfect 5-round Swiss with 128 players, he said 4 should be at 5-0, 20 should be at 4-1, 40 should be at 3-2.
Okay.
So do you remember the numbers that I broke down?
Yeah.
I said it was 60, which means that 60 would have been in the 2, like 3-2 and 2 and 3. So 3-2 by him, 40 divided by 128 is 31%. So I guessed 30% on each of those.
Yeah.
He's saying 31% on each of those. And then when you go out to the 4-1s, 20 of 128 is 15.6%.
Nice.
Remember how I said 15?
Yeah, that's cool. Oh, good.
And then the last 2 was 4 in 128, which is 3%, which is basically that 5% on the 2 ends.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, yep. Math still works.
Hey, there we go. Hey, putting that degree to work, Tom. Frui said, "Is this data available in a spreadsheet?" It is not. Right now, if you want to go check this out, there's a link down below to the Honest Wargamer website. If you look in the blog posts, it's the most recent stats blog post. A new stats blog post goes up every time he does it. Honest Wargamer is looking. They're getting the hosting sorted for where they can host this. Actually, so people can interact with the dashboard and begin doing their own slicing and dicing of the data. So go check that out. I don't know when he plans to launch that. Maybe he'll talk about it when he's on the show in a couple weeks. I'm excited for that when he actually So this is a rather complicated thing to host, but they are gonna put this data up so you can publicly drill through and stuff like that. I don't know if they're actually using Tableau, but it feels very Tableau-ish. But so you'll be able to interact with it. So go check that out. And then, like I said, the 4+ wins and the trend lines, that's all on AoS Shorts site. That's also linked down below. So go check that out. He has a lot of great breakdowns of that kind of thing. All right, well, there we go. That's the current meta. We'll have to see what happens when we get our balanced data slate. I thought this was good to lay this down so we understand that, like, some of these armies that are hurting, they're really hurting, and, like, talk about why. And some of these armies that are winning, they're really winning.
Right. And we need to understand, like, the variety of factors. And some of it, points just isn't going to fix it.
Right.
Like,
no, you can't fix most of the
people,
Sullen 6 by points, as we talked about, right?
Right. And that's my big complaint, is that, like, just jacking up the points on Sentinels isn't going to actually change the problem.
Right. We need to do more.
Right.
There's going to have to be real, tangible changes. So there we go, everybody. That's the stats. Go check out those sites for more details. Don't forget Nurgle next week. Get ready for the Grandfather's Blessing.
I have so many thoughts. I've been watching the WhatsApp stuff.
Sure. I'm sure. Yeah. The Nurgle channel is explosive right now.
It is. And I have so many thoughts. So, and you'll get all of them next week, folks.
It's going to be a fun show. So check that. Look for that. It'll be an early show next week. Tom, you don't have to talk about that. Let's see if you can do it, because it won't be a normal time show next week. So you might not. But anyways, look for that soon. Don't forget to hit that like. Subscribe if you haven't already. As always, everybody, we really appreciate you watching. And we'll see you next Wednesday.